What's up, guys? It's Braden. Thanks again for downloading and listening to America's Finest Football Show. Airing each and every Monday night from 10 to midnight during the football season, talking high school football, college football. It re-airs on YouTube, and if you're listening on or watching on YouTube right now, thanks again. Give us the like and the subscribe to Braden Suprenet's YouTube page at B_SURP, as well as 97.3 The Fan. You can follow me on social media at B_SURP, at BSURP. Thanks again for downloading and listening. Hope you enjoy the episode, guys. Good evening, San Diego. Welcome into another edition of America's Finest Football Show. We're here each and every Monday night from 10 to midnight. We also re-air this on YouTube every Thursday night to keep you updated on everything in high school football. A nice little preview to the football weekend coming up. Of course, we're going to talk a lot of high school football at the majority of our show each and every Monday night. We'll also go dive into a little bit of college football as well and talk some San Diego State Aztec football. I know that's college, but still, I was at the game over the weekend on Saturday. Got to a lot to report on that, even more than I did during my usual show. I'm Braden Suprenet. This is America's Finest Football Show, again, airing every Monday night from 10 to midnight. A nice opportunity for us to talk some high school football, some college football, as mentioned before. If you haven't heard me before, I'm on each and every Sunday morning on 97.3 The Fan. From 8 to 10, we're live and local, talking a lot more Padres baseball on Sundays during the baseball season than football, but we do dabble in some football. Kind of did some NFL preview yesterday on Sunday morning, but I'm there each and every Sunday morning. I'm also on the airwaves each and every day from 10 to 2 with Annie and Elston. So if this is your first time, give me a follow on social media at B_SURP. You can give me a subscribe to my YouTube channel, which this is airing on Thursday, as well as 97 through the Fans YouTube channel at B_SURP. You can follow me on Twitter at B_SURP and on Instagram at B_SURP BSURP. I'm also on TikTok. So give me a follow on all social media platforms and be sure to like and subscribe. All of this is in podcast form. So if you miss any of tonight's show and you want to go back, or if you're driving around late tonight and you want to catch a little bit more of it, you can hear it in podcast form starting Tuesday morning when that drops on the podcast platform. Again, wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, you can listen to us on the Odyssey app. Wherever you get your podcasts, we are there and ready to go. Lots to report on the high school weekend for week 3 as we get ready for week 4 coming up on Friday. Week 3 was very fun, and I mentioned last week on the show, this was going to be a week that really started to see separation between teams that can compete for an Open and Division I championship and teams that might just be, playing a pretty good schedule in their favor. And we had some pretty good matchups on Friday, and we'll dive through a lot of these as we talk about last week's top 10. I will give you my top 25 in high school football later on in the show and talk about some of the standouts, some of the big standouts in high school football as well before we talk about college football in the next hour, in the 11 o'clock hour. Let's talk about the top 10 and how the top 10 fared last week before I give you a new top 10, a new top 25, if you will, and then where everything stands. Because, again, this year with high school football, and if you need an explanation, I explained it last week on the show. You can go find it on the podcast listed as under the Braden Suprenet Show, wherever you get your podcasts until we get the new podcast station up for America's Finest Football Show. But on the last show last week, I explained how the playoffs were going to work. And if you're new to this, or if it's been a long time since you've been in high school or have followed high school football, it's not based on enrollment anymore. They went away from that the year after I graduated high school in 2014. It's gone to a power rating system, and the power rating system is tweaked here and there, but everything was still in divisions. You started in a division at the beginning of the year, and then your best power rating, got you seated in certain divisions on how well you have played as a program over a 3-period span. Now it's based on that season and playing this season. So everybody that has elected to be in divisions 1 through 5, because there is division 5 AA for some small schools that didn't want to be a part of the top 5 divisions, and it makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of the small, Christian schools, the small private schools that, are playing, just above 8-man football in terms of, how many kids that they have on their team, and it fits their program really well to be in Division 5 AA. But the rest of the county and the Imperial County, that's part of the San Diego section, is going to be seeded 1 through, I think there's 80-something teams in San Diego, and that's how they're going to seed the playoffs for the playoffs. And if you look at the way the playoffs shake out, they're going to go 4 teams in the open division. They're going to go 12 teams in D1 all the way through D5. Division 5 AA will be a little bit different. Division 6 is going to be the 8-man football league as well. But you end up getting about 12 teams that don't make the postseason when it's all said and done. I have the official number right here based on everything plays out. And I've already put together what it's going to look like. There's going to be 14 teams that are not going to be playing in the postseason here in San Diego. And again, 1 through 64, top 4 in the open, next 12 are in D1, next 12 are in D2 on the way down. And that's how everything's going to work out in high school football this year from Divisions 1 through Division 5. There are some chances to get in the playoffs if you're not ranked according to CalPreps 1 through 64 if you win your league. And there are a couple of teams that are the highest ranked team in their league right now that would not be in the postseason that I have in the postseason, taking away a spot from a team that might have a higher rating than them, according to CalPreps, just based on, since we haven't had league matchups yet. We'll talk about that more later on in this hour. But I thought last week's games were a good determining factor in how that was going to play out and who had a legitimate chance to be in Division 1 or in the open division, and see how the cream will rise to the top here for a lot of programs. Let's start with Granite Hills. Granite Hills started they played on Saturday, ended up losing to Perry from Gilbert, Arizona. Had to play at 4:00 on a hot day at Cathedral Catholic High School. A very valiant effort out of Granite Hills against a pretty good team from Arizona. Granite Hills ended up losing that game, as I mentioned, 39-21. So a tough loss for Granite, but Granite's got a very difficult schedule. And here's the good news for Granite Hills, and it's really the good news for Lincoln and Granite Hills and Cathedral is all those teams play each other. Lincoln's not going to play Granite this year in the regular season, but Cathedral plays Lincoln and Granite still has an opportunity to play Cathedral. And despite the Grossmont Hills League probably being a little down in terms of power rating right now, and if you look at the power rating of the Grossmont Hills League, I mean, the next best opponent in league right now for Granite's Helix. And they just got their first win of the season last week against St. Augustine, who has really been struggling out of the gate. And Helix is trying to play with their backup quarterback right now. We'll get to the Helix game in just a little bit. But Granite Hills, if you look at the way the schedule plays out for them, they got Eastlake this week. That's going to hurt them regardless, because Eastlake is a negative 12.3 power rating according to CalPreps.com. And if you haven't heard about CalPreps.com, Ned Freeman put together this website a long time ago, back in the early 2000s, to, kind of rate every team in California, which led to rating every team in the United States. And he is the guy that came up with the formula for the Max Preps ratings. They take CalPreps.com. So if you want an accurate look at how every high school is in not only San Diego, but California and the nation, go to CalPreps.com. You'll be able to check out everything you need to know in terms of who stacks up against who. And we use a lot of CalPreps.com metrics on this show because it's the most accurate. And I'll tell you that here in a second when we go through some of the games that we picked last week. But if you look at the CalPreps rating system, again, they rate everybody, from modern day Santa Ana all the way to, thousands and thousands of teams down at the bottom of the barrel in the United States. And what that is you get a power rating per. And anything that's a positive power rating obviously is good. If you're around 30 or higher, it's you're in the solid category. Anything 45 and higher, you're looking at a really good borderline great team. If you're over 50, you're going to be a top team in the country. More times than not. You're definitely going to be a top team in the state of California. A lot of our teams in here in San Diego are in the top 25 in California and have a pretty good power rating. And if just to give kind of an example of where the top is at, Lincoln right now has a 50 rating, followed by Cathedral with a 40.4. Carlsbad is a 39.8. LCC 38.2, and Granite Hills has now seen the rating drop after losing to Perry from Gilbert. They're down to a 32 rating. But that being said, like, that's kind of how the rating system plays out. Again, if you're just new to this is how this plays out. Again, I've been doing this show for a long time now. It's finally a great opportunity to be on the airwaves on 97.3 The Fan again. We had it for a while, went away, and I'm glad to bring it back. And, of course, I've been doing it in podcast form for years. But if you want to, again, subscribe, take a look at the podcast, get online on YouTube, follow me on social media, be able to find all this stuff. So how the rating system works is that both teams get a rating, and based on that, the formula determines whether, like, what the score is going to be between two schools. In fact, CalPreps.com did a great job predicting the games last week. In fact, they predicted Mission Hills would beat Oceanside by 14 points going into Friday night. I mentioned on the show last Monday, and Mission Hills beat Oceanside by 14 points. That was an exact prediction that CalPreps.com hit right there on the head very early. So they're that accurate sometimes, and others they're not. I mean, it's still very early on, and there's a disclaimer on the CalPreps.com predictions. You can project a matchup now, but they don't officially do predictions until later on in the season. Sometimes it's October, but right now they're not going to project games until September 15th. So until this weekend, they're not going to predict any games, which is interesting. But that being said, it's going to make a lot more sense. They need more data in order to do that. So no projected scores until September 15th comes and passes. So we'll have a more accurate, probably, predictions out of CalPreps.com. That being said, based on the prediction that CalPreps.com has, they give you kind of a spread, if you will. Again, this is not for gambling. The formula was made for gambling, but not for high school, and then they applied it to just kind of determine who's good and who's not on a good computer rating system, almost like the BCS. So they give you a score prediction. So Mission Hills was projected to beat Oceanside by 14 points. They have to beat Oceanside by 14 points or more in order to get a positive power rating, points to their power rating, if that makes sense. So if you're an underdog and you flat out beat the team, you're going to get positive points. If you're an underdog by like 21 points and you cover and you still lose by 14, you're going to get positive points. So that's kind of how the scale works out. So based on Granite Hill, and the thing is, it's capped at 21 points over the spread. So if you're projected to win by 7 points and you beat a team by 28, if you end up beating them by 28, it's the same as beating them by 35. So you don't, run it up on teams. So that's how it works out. So going back to Granite Hills and why this is a significant loss for them, and it's not that totally bad because they still have Cathedral on the schedule. But if you look at their upcoming schedule, some schools are not doing them any favors, and it's not their fault, right? I mean, Madison being on the schedule is not there. It's like, we're really going to hurt Granite Hills right now. But they play Eastlake next week or this week. Granite does. Eastlake's got a negative 12.3 rating. So if you look at it, the score that Granite's going to have to beat Eastlake by is so astronomically high that just playing this team is going to hurt them in the power rating. I mean, Granite could probably beat Eastlake by 60 points, and they will lose points in the rating system. And this rating system, again, rewards you for playing really good opponents and hurts you for playing really poor opponents. That's why when you get to league and some of these are not, that you didn't get to put it together in your schedule, you get burned by some of these games. And the same thing plays out when you beat a team earlier in the season that had a higher power rating. The more they lose, the more that hurts you. But it usually ends up balancing itself out because a lot of the schools that are really good end up playing really good schools, so their rating doesn't really plummet too much. Teams that aren't very good usually play schools that aren't very good, and so their power rating doesn't really fall too much either. So that being said, Granite's not going to get any points against Eastlake. They're not going to get a lot of points against Madison. Then they play Steel Canyon with a negative 1.4. They're not going to get a lot of points playing them. They got Cathedral, so win, lose, or draw in that one as long as they don't lose by whatever the spread is during that time. And they'll be underdogs in that game if the power ratings continue at this point. That's going to give them a boost. And if they beat Cathedral, that's going to give them a big boost, and that will be a game that will probably get them into the Open if they win that. Because then they play Mount Miguel, and Mount Miguel, even though they're having a good year, only has a 10.4 rating because the teams that they have played so far are not rated well by CalPreps. Helix is not doing anybody any favors in the Grossmont Hills League either. Their rating is down to 15.3. It was a 50.9 last year. So, and all these will change as the season goes on when teams play each other more and you get more, games under CalPreps' belt. So from a math standpoint, and I know that kind of bores a lot of people, but that's how this works in the grand scheme of things. This is why we can help predict if the season ended today. So Granite had a tough loss against Perry. Now, the good thing about Granite playing Perry, and Perry being a 37.9 rating, Perry's going to do very well in Arizona. And the more Perry wins in Arizona, the more Granite Hills wins for playing a really good team and keeping the margin relatively close. So that's how that kind of plays out for Granite Hills. And that was the first game we wanted to talk about because they were the number one team coming into this weekend, and they lost in an Honor Bowl game. Again, a lot of distractions with the Honor Bowl. They do a lot of cool things. I love what the Honor Bowl does. Mark Soto does a great job with the Honor Group, and their mission is to raise money to support military members, either with support animals or specialized chairs. They really help a lot of the fallen soldiers and a lot of the Gold Star families too, as they honor them before each and every game. It was cool. Girls Flag Football was a part of it this year as well. But it's a different thing. You're playing at a different time. There's only two games that are played at a normal time. Cathedral gets one of them because they host the event and they play at 7:30. And then the other one is whatever the main event game is on Saturday, which is usually the best game. And this year was Sarah Gardena and Long Beach Poly. So that, other than that, most San Diego teams are playing at like 4 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And luckily for the boys that have to strap on pads and everything like that, the girls' flag football took over on 1 o'clock on Saturday. Otherwise, that would have been a brutal game for anybody. I mean, I was at USD, and it was a hot box in the press box for USD Central Washington. So I can only imagine what the temperature would be like, at 1 o'clock at Cathedral Catholic High School, right? So it's a tough one to win. I mean, there's a lot of San Diego teams that do win. There's a lot of San Diego teams that don't win in those games. But Granite Hills, tough matchup. They end up taking the loss to Gilbert. Lincoln goes out to Nevada and beats Coronado 52-14. Achilles Smith Jr. threw for 178 yards. Not his highest. We've seen him throw a lot more, but they didn't need him to throw a lot. They hammered Coronado. Coronado, not one of the best teams in relative terms in Southern California, but they're one of the best teams in Nevada. And Lincoln's got to go out and play a bunch of schools out of town because nobody in town will play them aside from the ones that are already in their league that are signed up to play them. So they went out and they had to play Arborview. They have to play. They went out and played Long Beach Poly. They're playing Coronado of Nevada last week. They got J. Sarah Catholic coming up. J. Sarah's ranked 7th in the country right now. They're going to host J. Sarah on Friday. And then later on, they got to go to Grant in Sacramento. Grant's a tough team up in Sacramento as well. I mean, I can go through the whole Lincoln schedule, but it's brutal, and it's before they even get to league. They got to play Los Alamitos too. I mean, Los Al might not be at the top right now in the southern section, but Los Al is always good. So Lincoln's power rating is going to be high regardless how well they play and who they play. They have scheduled so high, and they have to, that they're going to be in the open. I almost guarantee they're going to be in the open even if they lose every game from here on out because their power rating is going to be so high. I mean, it would have to go astronomically bad for Lincoln to not make the open this year. So that's already one spot really taken. But they go out to Nevada. They beat Coronado 52-14. Achilles Smith, 178 yards, threw a touchdown pass to Ty Olson. Ty Olson's numbers weren't like astronomically high either. He had a pretty solid day, but we've seen Ty put together some better days. Ty ends up 5 receptions, 55 yards, and a touchdown. Didn't really need it. Courtney Miller-Thompson had 6 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown. Aiden Jackson on the ground, 16 carries, 140 yards and 2 touchdowns at a long of 35. King David Dunn, Coach Dunn's son, 3 receptions, 14 yards and a touchdown for the Hornets. And then defensively, Jared Benjamin, 5 total tackles, 2 for loss and 2 sacks at a good day. Plus, they were able to get their backup in Jordan Roa, a sophomore transfer from Helix. He was 9 for 14, 113 yards and 2 touchdowns. So anytime you can get reps for your backups, that's great too. And that's how Lincoln fared in their game. Cathedral Catholic played Mountain Point in the Honor Bowl. They were the main event on Friday. Cathedral won 27-13, jumped out to a 27-0 lead, and they got outscored 13-0 in the second half. Got cute at times. Didn't really put the team away. Made a lot of mistakes in the second half. But Mountain Point's a pretty solid football team. They're not as good as Perry is in Arizona, but Arizona high school football this year is wide open. I mean, there are a lot of teams that are usually traditionally really good football teams in Arizona that are down. And it's the wild, wild west in Phoenix coming up in high school football this year when they start playing. And, teams like Mountain Point and Perry, might be some of the best teams in Arizona when it's all said and done, which could really boost Cathedral and Granite Hills power rating a little bit more. Stat-wise, Jonathan Solomon, 18 rushes, 73 yards, and a touchdown for Cathedral. Jake Funderburg had 13 carries for 52 yards and 2 scores. Kept it on the ground, Cathedral did. Brady Palmer did pretty well for the Dons. Again, they're missing a lot of players still, a lot of the transfers that are trying to come over from St. Augustine from a year ago. So, the fact that they're continuing to win with a lot of their weapons not on the benches or not playing is very good. So they started the season off 3-0. San Marcos starts the season off undefeated. They beat Mater Dei 58-14. Poor Mater Dei. They have now played. Mater Dei Catholic, by the way, has now played 3 of the top 4 teams in the county for the second year in a row. They opened up with Cathedral at home, and then they played number 1 Granite, and then they played San Marcos, who last week was ranked 4th in the Union Tribune top 10. Talk about a brutal way to start your season. But that being said, I mean, based on the way that the power rating system works and for CalPreps, they're going to be okay. Mount Miguel's going to be, not Mount Miguel, Mater Dei is going to be in a good spot. I mean, they're 18th in the county right now because of the power rating. They're 0-3. Their power rating's is a 5, and they've gotten blown out in all 3 of their games. But they're hanging tough, and I wouldn't be surprised if they just cruise through their league. I mean, they could honestly finish the season 5-5 and rip off 5 wins at the end of the year. I mean, this week they got Mira Mesa, which is a win, or they're off this week. So they play 3 of the top 4 teams in the county, then they have a bye. They got Mira Mesa, which is definitely a winnable game for them, as Mira Mesa has a negative 16.6 rating. St. Augustine is really down this year. They're already 0-3 to start the year. Very winnable game. They are projected to actually win every game from here on out. I mean, Mater Dei, who got blown out by Cathedral, Granite, and San Marcos, more likely than not will go 7-3. I think the game against Sweetwater might be tough. We'll see what Grossmont's like by October when Mater Dei has to play Grossmont. But for everybody going, Mater Dei is not good. Mater Dei is going to be fine. They're going to go 7-3. That might put them in a D2 spot, high D2 seed. They might be competing for a Division I playoff spot. And they start the season 0-3, which is pretty remarkable. As for San Marcos, they continue to be very impressive. Create McKinley threw 6 touchdown passes. He threw touchdown passes of 80 and 70 yards to Jace Nix, 42 yards to Brady Full, and 11-yard touchdown to Caleb Reese, so 4 touchdown passes. Reese and Full also ran for touchdowns. Elijah Betchel returned a fumble for a touchdown. Mater Dei Catholic's 0-3. Like I said before, they could easily be 7-3. In fact, they're projected to win the rest of their games this season. So no reason to hit the panic button yet if you're part of Mater Dei Catholic. Mission Hills, the 5th team in the county, defeated Oceanside 28-14. CalPreps had this as a 14-point win for Mission Hills. Troy Hoon, who's committed to Penn State, Mission Hills quarterback, threw touchdown passes about 34 yards to Giovanni Hart, a 72-yard touchdown pass to Thomas Gideon. And Hart also had a pair of touchdown runs as Mission Hills cruised to a 28-14 win over Oceanside. Oceanside is getting closer, but they're not there yet. They're getting closer, but they're not there yet. And they know that. They're working on it. They're trying to, flip the program back around and get back to a spot of being one of the best teams and one of the dynasties in San Diego. I mean, it's been, I think, 9 years now, maybe 10. It might have been 10 years the last time, 9 or 10 years the last time Oceanside won a CIF championship. I mean, they were at the top. I mean, when I was playing, Oceanside was the best team in the county almost every single year, battling it out with Helix almost every single year in the D2 playoffs. And now they're just trying to work their way back to that spot. They're not there yet, but they're getting closer. And I thought that was a good effort against Mission Hills. There's no such thing as a moral victory. Mission Hills is a good football team. They're a top 10 football team. They're going to be high in D1. They're going to be knocking on the door of an open division playoff spot when it's all said and done. They always are. Coach Hauser's ball club in San Marcos at Mission Hills High School is always part of the conversation. Always. They will be right there. They'll be 5 or 6 like the whole year on Cal Preps and be knocking on the door and being like 2 games away or a couple of results their way into being into the open division, which again should be everybody's goal right now, especially since they're going to rank it 1 through 64. I would rather win an open division championship than a D1 championship. I would rather come in last in the open division and get blown out in the first game than win a D1 championship. I would rather do that. Maybe I'm in the minority, but that's what I would do. I would take that 9 times out of 10 because at least I finished in the top 4 instead of finishing 5th at the very best. Mission Hills continues to win good games. Oceanside, not there yet. Mount Miguel beats La Jolla Country Day 35-21. La Jolla Country Day kept it close for a long period of time. La Jolla Country Day is a pretty good ball club. Mount Miguel got a little bit of a scare there, but not too much. They won by 14 points. A.J. Stowers had 3 passing touchdowns and 1 rushing score to lead Mount Miguel to a 3-0 record. Stowers also had a 50-yard strike to Brandon Arrington, who played for the Matadors. Paris Vernon had a 35-yard touchdown with under a minute to play after La Jolla Country Day couldn't recover an onside kick that they tried to make the game close there at the end. Stowers was 17 of 24 for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Garrett Ace scored twice for La Jolla Country Day, once on a 30-yard touchdown reception from Jack Levine and another on a 2-yard run. Cesare also had a pair of interceptions in this game as well for Mount Miguel. Mount Miguel wins 35-21. I don't have Mount Miguel in my top 10 yet, but I think they're getting closer and closer to being a top 10 program in San Diego. They're still ranked around 10th, 11th, or 12th in Cal Preps, looking at a D1 spot potentially in the postseason for Mount Miguel. We'll see how they do later on in league play. They got Bishops this week. Carlsbad over San Pasqual, 42-12 on Thursday. The number 7th ranked Lancers, according to the San Diego Union Tribune, has now bumped their status up to number 3, according to Cal Preps. Eli McNeil, Thad McNeil's son, completed 16 of 20 for 302 yards and 6 touchdowns for the Lancers against San Pasqual. Connor Hawk had 4 receptions for 94 yards and a touchdown, while Jake Morrison had 80 yards rushing and 60 receiving. Curtis Siasi also had an interception. San Pasqual has now dropped to 0-3. It's a tough year for San Pasqual. Carlsbad, even though they lost game 1, is not out of an opportunity to be in the open division. Interesting team to watch in Carlsbad. I think the Avocado League's wide open. Carlsbad, Mission Hills, and this team, La Costa Canyon. La Costa Canyon passed yet another hurdle on their quest to be an open division team and be one of the top 4 teams in San Diego. In fact, Cal Preps has them at number 4 right now. So if the season ended today, which we're going to get into later, La Costa Canyon would be in the open division. They beat San Clemente 27-17. Now, San Clemente it's hit and miss when you play San Clemente. Sometimes they got Sam Darnold and they're very good. And sometimes they're just an average San Diego section team that happens to be in the southern section. I think this year they're above average. Like if San Clemente was in San Diego right now, they'd probably be around 5th or 6th in the county right now. You know, they lost to LCC, obviously, as I just mentioned. I don't think they'd beat Cathedral. I don't think they'd beat Lincoln. They're not going to beat Carlsbad, probably not. I don't think they beat Granite Hills. So they're probably in the middle. But that's still a really good win. I mean, that would be a top 10 win in San Diego for La Costa Canyon. And I think that was a big measuring stick. You know, they beat Del Norte last week, or 2 weeks ago. They destroyed Del Norte. And Del Norte is a good team. I mean, Del Norte will be, I think, in Division I playoffs. And they bounced back last week, Del Norte did. So La Costa Canyon with a good win over Saints isn't very good, but it's still at the time a D1 level win. They beat Del Norte, and then they cleared their biggest hurdle so far this season in San Clemente. And the way things will shake up for La Costa Canyon, they got a really good chance of winning the Avocado League. I mean, La Costa Canyon and Carlsbad and Mission Hills is going to be a fun round robin between those three. And I haven't even talked about El Camino yet, who's got some horses. I mean, they got some dogs on their offensive and defensive line. That's going to be fun to watch. I'm looking forward to that. Currently, Carlsbad just edges LCC out in the power rating system by 0.7 points. LCC's 3-0, Carlsbad's 2-1, Mission Hills is 2-1, El Camino. I mean, those four schools are going to be beating up on each other in the Avocado League. Poway, unfortunately, and Torrey Pines might be cannon fodder in all of this. But La Costa Canyon, beating Saints, beating Del Norte, beating San Clemente, they're not going to get tested the next 3 weeks against Mira Mesa, Fallbrook, or Poway. If they drop any of those games, you could kiss the Open Division goodbye. And then they got El Camino. I mean, by the time they play El Camino, they're going to be 6-0. And they're going to play El Camino on October 11th, and that's going to be another big test. But they got, unfortunately for LCC, and this might be the same case for the other schools in this 4-team round robin, they got to go El Camino, Mission Hills, Carlsbad, all in a row, no buys. If they make it through that, I mean, they're going to be, they're in the Open, and that's not even going to be close. You know, as long as you win the surfboard against Torrey Pines in the final week of the year, Costa Canyon is going to be in the Open Division. They've cleared their hurdles. Now, they need San Clemente to continue to win or at least play good teams in the Southern section, which they will. But LCC is, that to me, that is the favorite right now to win the Avocado League. And that's not saying, I mean, Carlsbad's got the higher lead right now, but the loss to Lakewood really hurts Carlsbad right now. They got a great game against Del Norte. I think they'll handle business against Del Norte. Ramona's going to kill their power rating when they play them. And then they got Mission Hills. I mean, this Avocado League, they might get 2 teams in the Open. I'm always hesitant to just automatically crown them the best league in San Diego right now, but they are the best league right now from top to bottom. They have the most depth in their league. I mean, the Western League has always been really good. The Western League's got 2 teams, and that's really it right now. I mean, they're struggling. Point Loma is the Eastern League team that they bump up, and Saints is they're in a rebuild right now. So Western League is a little bit down, but top to bottom in terms of competitiveness, in terms of who's got the most depth, it's the Avocado League right now. I love spurring that debate around. Went a little late and kind of recapping week 2. We still got some of the games that we want to recap and more shout-outs to give out, but we do need to take a break. Going late tonight from 10 to midnight on 97.3 The Fan. This is America's Finest Football Show. We're talking high school football. We'll talk college football. It's a football show following Monday Night Football each and every Monday night from 10 to midnight. I'm Braden Surprenant, your host, until midnight on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Late nights on 97.3 The Fan. I'm Braden Surprenant. This is America's Finest Football Show. Thanks again for making our evening a part of yours. If you're driving around late at night, want to get some football action in, talk some football with us. Thanks again for joining. We're going to be here each and every Monday night from 10 to midnight, with the exception of next week when the Padres will preempt this show. So no show next week, but the following week we are good to go and cleared for takeoff for each and every Monday night from 10 to midnight. We're talking a lot of high school football here in San Diego. We dabble in some college football as well. Haven't decided if I want to talk NFL or not either, but thanks again for making the late nights with us, driving around town, getting to and from. Maybe you're just getting off work, maybe you're just headed to work. Thanks again for making our day a part of yours. If you missed any of the first segment, we talked about some of the games during week 3 of the high school football season. We dove into the majority of how the top 10 did. You could go check it out on our podcast platform, which will be up on Tuesday morning. You can find us wherever you find your podcasts at the Braden Surprenant Show. And under the Braden Surprenant Show, you can find the America's Finest Football Show. Although if you search that under most platforms in which you get your podcasts, you will find, in fact, our show. We are also re-air the show on Thursday nights on YouTube, so you'll be able to watch us on YouTube. get you a little preview for week 4 coming up this weekend. And we got a lot of good games in week 4, and we'll preview that in the 11 o'clock hour. But I want to continue talking about some of the games from week 2 and get the shout outs out. We talked about La Costa Canyon, and we talked about how La Costa Canyon is going to be a contender for the Open Division after the latest hurdle that they have leaped, and that is beating San Clemente on Friday night, 27-13. I mentioned before, Quinn Roth had a great night, 14 of 18 for 208, two touchdowns. Cody Herman had rushing touchdowns and receiving touchdown, rushing and receiving. Nash Cooper returned an interception for a touchdown, had a strip sack. He did a really good job defensively for the Mavericks, and Sean Silvical, the group, is playing really good ball, and they had a good schedule. You didn't know how down St. Augustine was going to be. Obviously, when they made that schedule, it was a little bit different. With Saints having a lot of, being a Division I champion from a year ago, obviously with the mass exodus out of Saints to other schools, it's a little bit of a different team right now, but not really La Costa Canyon's fault. You got to play who's in front of you. And they took care of business against St. Augustine, who is one of the better teams in San Diego most years, although it is a down year this year. You haven't played Del Norte. Del Norte is a solid football team. They're doing great under Nick Mardet, the head coach of the Del Norte Nighthawks. La Costa Canyon is Del Norte's only loss. Del Norte bounced back after losing to La Costa Canyon a couple of weeks ago. They won over the weekend, back to 2-1. So that's a good win for LCC. And then, of course, San Clemente taking care of business against the Southern Section school is always going to be great. And they did that on Friday. La Jolla, good win over Madison. Game was on YourView TV, and La Jolla wins 23-3. They were projected to win this game 31-17 by 14 points. They end up winning by 20. They end up covering. They got a little bit of a boost for that, even though Madison is down. Madison now 1-2 on the season. La Jolla is 3-0 to open a season for the first time since the COVID-19 season year of 2020, which was the spring season. Before that, the Vikings had not been 3-0 since 1995. I was born in 1995. That's how long ago it's been for La Jolla to start a season 3-0, aside from the COVID-19 shortened spring season of 2020, which was radical all over the place anyway. And La Jolla beat Helix that spring season, by the way. But that being said, they have now done it only twice since 1995, starting the year out 3-0. They're doing a great job down there. Tyler Roach is doing a great job with La Jolla. They're going to be a team that is going to be in not the Open. They're not going to play. They're not going to be in the Open, but they're going to be a team that's definitely in Division I. They might get a bye in Division I, how things are shaking out for the La Jolla Vikings, but they're off to a great start. They're at number 8 in the county, according to CalPreps on the Union Tribune. They were top 8 last week. I got them. I'll tell you about my top 25 in just a little bit in San Diego. But La Jolla's got a good start to the year, and they're favored to go undefeated the rest of the way. They are rated to. I think this week's going to be a big tester for them. If they beat Rancho Bernardo and Eric Weddle's group, look out. I don't think La Jolla is going to get a loss all year unless something bad happens. I think Rancho Bernardo could probably get them, but according to CalPreps, La Jolla's got a little bit of an advantage right now, and they see La Jolla as potentially the leader in the clubhouse in this game. And we'll talk more about that in the 11 o'clock hour, but that's going to be a great game on Friday night, La Jolla and Rancho Bernardo. But good start to the season, great start to the season for Tyler Roach and company over there at La Jolla High School. Last game in the top 10, El Camino hammers Rancho Buena Vista. El Camino is better than RBV. RBV has been struggling for a long time. It's been a long time since Dave Roberts was walking through that door. 48-12 victory for the Wildcats. Blake Sega threw for 137 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Leo Bell, my apologies, rushed 7 times for 102 yards and 2 touchdowns. Blake Certeza had a rushing touchdown. Jonathan Berhano caught a 32-yard pass, and Caden Coleman returned a punt 41 yards for a touchdown. Zake Balloon returned a fumble for a touchdown, had a sack, and a tackle for a loss. El Camino just all over RBV, just completely overpowering Rancho Buena Vista to improve to 2-1. RBV is now 0-3. I do want to mention some other scores. Grossmont over Mira Mesa on Friday night. 32-28. Grossmont's throwing the rock all over the place. Kai Jones recovered an onside kick, and Parker Vanderborough caught a 39-yard go-ahead touchdown pass to lift Grossmont to 2-1. It was a tight battle between two schools that look exactly the same in their uniforms. Well, they used to. When Grossmont had the gold helmets, they looked just like Mira Mesa. Vanderborough caught 10 passes for 133 yards and a pair of touchdowns, as well as a 2-point conversion. Going into the week, he was the leading receiver in the state of California. Noah Walker added 141 yards on 7 receptions and 2 touchdowns. Thomas Donovan completed 24 of 40 passes for 342 and 3 scores. Grossmont just lighting up scoreboards with Anthony Lawrence and company, and just padding the stat sheet in the passing department as they improved to 2-1 with a 32-28 victory over Mira Mesa. For Mira Mesa, now dropping to 2-1, Parker Rea passed for 166. Amari Sanders caught a 28-yard touchdown pass, 1 of 5 receptions for 109 yards. Ryder Lai rushed for 24 times for 126 yards and a touchdown in the loss for Mira Mesa, but a good win for Grossmont. Poway over Valley Center, 35-18. Mount Carmel wins the battle for Penasquitos. They win 31-14. University City, 3-0 with Quentin Demara, 15 of 22, 367, and 4 touchdown passes for the Centurions as they hammered Bonita Vista 48-16. Kearney over the Rock Academy, 49-10. Hoover hammered Maranatha 31-2. They improved to 2-1. Scripps Ranch beats a team out of town, beat Norwalk as Ryan Statter scored a pair of rushing touchdowns and had 22 tackles. 22 tackles for Statter of the Falcons as they improved to 3-0 and jump into my top 25. Santa Fe Christian hammered Orange Glen 63-0. Rancho Bernardo with a big win over Point Loma, 37-18. With the win, the Broncos now improved to 3-0. They were trailing 17-14 at halftime. Point Loma definitely came ready to play against the Broncos at home. Got a second half touchdown, the Broncos did, from Braden Kalin and Gage Weddle, Eric Weddle's son, and a pick from Dan Rhodes. Dylan Indigo had a 12-yard touchdown run and caught a touchdown pass from Trey Durham. Silas Christensen had a 97-yard kickoff return for a touchdown for the Broncos, his second touchdown in 2 weeks, and Point Loma now drops to 1-2. But they played some tough opponents. I mean, they played RB and Del Norte, and that league in the Palomar league, I think, and those schools in the Poway School District, that's going to be a fun battle between RB and Mount Carmel and Del Norte and maybe even Poway. So Rancho Bernardo wins over Point Loma 37-18. Army-Navy over Escondido Charter 29-0. 2-0 now starts for Army-Navy and company. Christian beats Mission Bay 48-7. Torrey Pines sneaks out of Escondido with a 34-33 win. A little bit of controversy in that game in terms of a runner potentially or a receiver being down with his knee on the ground. They didn't call it. Ended up working out for the Falcons. They end up scoring a touchdown. They win by 1 point. Chase Rogowski threw for 274 yards and 3 touchdowns. Zach Barger had 6 catches for 120 and 2 tuds. Joey Levenberg had 13 tackles. John Pryor with a pick and Cole Loiza with a pair of field goals as Torrey Pines beats Escondido 34-33, drops Escondido to 1-1 on the season. Crawford is now 2-1 after a victory over Mar Vista. San Diego High improves to 3-0 after beating Otay Ranch 20-14. Del Norte all over Eastlake 39-6. Southwest San Diego beats Tri-City Christian by 1. They won 34-33. Jordan Creighton caught 5 passes for 150 and 3 touchdowns as Southwest San Diego scored late to pull out the victory. Quarterback Leo Hoagland was 12 of 23 for 222 and 3 touchdowns. He also rushed for a 7-yard score. Neri Gomez added 78 yards rushing and a touchdown. Tri-City Christian's quarterback Joel Valerde threw a touchdown pass to Gary Dillard and Ian Johnson and ran for a touchdown as well, but it wasn't enough. Southwest San Diego over Tri-City Christian 34-33. West Hills beats Vista 31-16. Monte Vista over Castle Park 35-19. Santana beat Hilltop 37-14. Chula Vista beats El Cap 35-21. Central over Ramona 20-3. Valhalla beats San Ysidro 21-14. Steel Canyon over Morse 49-13. Shout out to Scratch. I'm sure he was fired up about that. Temecula Great Oak hammered Fallbrook 36-0. Brawley comes out to play Canyon Hills. They won 41-6. And then Sweetwater blanked Claremont 31-0. Sweetwater now 3-0 on the season. Zeren Cruz rushed for 175 yards and passed for 81 to lead Sweetwater past Claremont. Cruz scored 1 rushing on just 15 carries. Chris Corpus added 2 more touchdowns for the Red Devils. Sweetwater rushed for 242 yards and amassed 329 total yards. Alberto Marasco scored on an interception return. Sweetwater is 3-0. Thinking like it's 1985 right now down in Sweetwater with the way that they're playing for the Red Devils. That's it for a lot of the scores from last week and some of the shout-outs in terms of the standouts. When we come back, we'll get to the top 10, my top 25, and a little bit more on what everything would look like if the season ended today. Oh, we got one segment left in this first hour. We'll talk to you a little bit more in the second hour, of course, as the America's Finest football show rolls on from 10 to midnight right here on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Final segment of the first hour of America's Finest football show right here on 97.3 The Fan, San Diego's #1 sports station. I'm Braden Suprenant, leading up to midnight tonight, live and local, talking some high school football throughout San Diego County, as well as some college football, which we'll get into in the 11 o'clock hour when we come back. I do want to mention, and we talked about this, we just talked about all the games from last week, and I do want to get into what my top 10 vote was for this week's Union Tribune top 10 poll. And if you want to check out what the poll was, it is on the San Diego Union Tribune website and tweeted out by multiple accounts on social media. But I've been ranking the top 25 the last couple of weeks, and I'm going to stick with that. And so I have some teams on the outside looking in. So we'll start with 25 and work our way up. 25 this week, I got Point Loma. They had a tough loss to Rancho Bernardo, who is in my top 10. They lost 37-18. Very valiant effort that were leading at halftime. 17 to whatever it was, I think they were leading at halftime in that game against Rancho Bernardo. Were unable to hang on against the Broncos as the Broncos kind of turned it on in the second half. But they led 17-14 at halftime. And ended up losing 37-17. So not a bad showing by Point Loma. They're coming number 25. Madison, I got them at 24, 1-2. Bad loss not a bad loss because La Jolla is pretty good, but they lost 23-3 to La Jolla. Scripps Ranch moves up a couple of spots that were not ranked in my top 25 last week. But I now have them at number 23 after beating Norwalk 29-12. Poway comes in at 21. Lost to Rancho Bernardo in their first week and have since won 2 in a row. They beat Valley Center last week, 35-18. And the week before that, they beat St. Augustine, 34-16. So some solid wins for Poway as they come in at number 21. 20, Torrey Pines started higher on my list this year. They've dropped from 18 to 20 after beating Escondido 34-33 to get their first win of the year. Lost to La Jolla in the second week. La Jolla was able to beat Torrey Pines. Torrey Pines with a gritty win at Escondido as they were able to beat the Tigers or the Cougars 34-33 and improved to 1-2. They're in my top 20. Top 15. Mater Dei comes in at 19-0-3. They're still in my top 25 because they're going to win their next 7 games and be 7-3 when the season's over. They just played 3 of the top 4 teams in the county to start the year. Brawley comes in number 18. They had a bye last week or 2 weeks ago, and they beat Canyon Hills 41-6. They're a good team out in the desert. I got them in my top 25 at 18. Santa Fe Christian with offensive coordinator Drew Brees puts up 63 points against Orange Glen. Not a huge result, but they jump up to 17th from 23rd as they're 2-1 after losing to Oceanside 2 weeks ago. La Jolla Country Day with a tough loss to Mount Miguel. They still stay in my top 25. They come in at number 16 at 2-1. Central is 3-0 now out in the desert. They beat Ramona 20-3. Got some good players out there. Got a good D lineman going to TCU. And they're going to be a force to be reckoned with as they're right there, potentially going to make the open division. I got them at number 15. In the top 15, Rancho Bernardo is number 10 for me at 3-0. Mount Miguel comes in at 11 at 3-0. Both coming off victories. Del Norte comes in at number 12 at 2-1 after a bounce-back win over Eastlake. Helix comes in at 13. They got their first win of the year, so they stopped their free fall from the top 10. They're now at 13 at 1-2. Oceanside with a tough loss to Mission Hills, 28-14. Again, they're close, but they're not there yet. They come in at 14. As for the rest of the top 10, I mentioned Rancho Bernardo at number 10. Everybody in the top 10 this week won that I voted for, with the exception of Granite. I'm not going to drop Granite too far because of the fact that Perry's a really good team out of Arizona. I got Rancho Bernardo 10, La Jolla 9 after a drubbing of Madison 23-3. I got El Camino at number 8. They stay the same after a win over Rancho Buena Vista. Mission Hill stays the same over a win against Oceanside. San Marcos 3-0 after beating Mater Dei comes in number 6. I got Carlsbad 5. They move up one spot after beating San Pasqual. I got La Costa Canyon 4. Granite Hills stays in the top 3 after the win, or after the loss to Perry. Got Cathedral 2, and I'm keeping Lincoln number 1. That's my top 10. When we come back, going to get some college football action on America's Finest Football Show on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.
What's up, guys? It's Braden Soprano. Thanks again for downloading and listening to America's Finest Football Show. Airing each and every Monday night from 10 to midnight during the football season, talking high school football, college football. It re-airs on YouTube, and if you're listening on or watching on YouTube right now, thanks again. Give us the like and the subscribe to Braden Soprenit's YouTube page at B_SURP, as well as 97.3 The Fan. You can follow me on social media at B_SURP, at BSERP. Thanks again for downloading and listening. Hope you enjoy the episode, guys.
Final hour of America's Finest Football Show right here on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. I'm Braden Soprano. Taking up to midnight tonight on a Monday night, following Monday Night Football, talking high school football, talking college football. You know, maybe we'll dabble in some NFL in the next couple of weeks or so, but it's been a fun show so far. We're recapping a lot of the stuff from the high school week that was, week 3 from last Friday. We'll preview week 4 coming up in just a little bit. Later on in the show, we will also dive into some college football, and I'll talk about my experience at San Diego State this weekend at the Aztec game. Went to the USD game at 1 o'clock, worked the USD game at 1 o'clock, and then went as a fan to the San Diego State game. And a lot to unpack with the Aztecs and the Toreros in town, talking some local college football, but had a great slate of college football during week 2 of the college football season. Obviously, yesterday, NFL Sunday, was great. Week 1, it was great to talk to a lot of you about week 1. Yesterday on the Braden Soprano Show, again, if you haven't heard on the weekends yet, on Sunday mornings from 8 to 10, I am there each and every morning talking Padres baseball, talking football, college football, recap of the college football slate on Saturday, previewing the NFL Sunday. It's a great time on the weekend, and it's all got a local San Diego flair by a local San Diegan. I'm born and raised San Diegan, 4th generation San Diegan. Love being here in San Diego. That's why I love talking high school football with you guys here in town as well. I'm Braden Soprano. You can follow me on social media at B_SURP on Twitter and on Instagram. You can also subscribe to my YouTube page at BSERP is the handle, but you can probably search Braden Soprano on YouTube as well. This show streams on my YouTube page on Thursdays at about 7 o'clock. And also on the 97 through the fan page. All of our shows now are live on YouTube. So this one will, with a couple of things that have to go into place for the YouTube. You know, we're on Mondays, but then we have to redo the YouTube part a little bit later on Thursdays. But I'm in the chat, so I'll be talking about this with you guys in the future. Or if you're in the future already and you're on Thursday, thanks again for jumping on with us. Be sure to hit the like button if you're watching right now. Subscribe to this YouTube page on 97.3 The Fan. Subscribe to my YouTube page at B_SURP if you want to get any more high school football content and where I'm at. Aside from my Sunday show, each and every Sunday morning from 8 to 10 on The Fan, I also am a part of the Annie and Elston show from 10 to 2 weekdays on 97.3 The Fan as well. Talking a lot more Padres baseball on that show, and we talk more football here on this show. This is kind of our time slot for the week to talk some football with you. So talk to high school for the entire first hour. We're going to get back to high school football at about 11:30, but I do want to dive into the college Saturday that was in college football and talk about the 10 best games of week 2. And I got to watch a lot of these games, or at least follow a lot of these games while I was going about all over the county, doing my own college football Saturday, if you will. But we went with the top 10 games according to ESPN. They went with the top 20. And I'm going to pick the top 10 games that I thought out of that top 20 list, specifically at the D1 level and at the FBS level, because there were some great games and there are some wide open races in college football after a week 2 results. Crazy week 2, and I bet you it's going to be even a crazier week 3 coming up in college football this weekend. Best game of the weekend, though, as we start off, was out here on the West Coast. It was the Oregon Ducks of the Big Ten and Boise State of the Mountain West. Game was going back and forth. It was great. It came down to the wire. Oregon outlasts Boise State 37-14 to improve to 2-0. But they have been such an underachiever this year to start 2024. I mean, they were in a battle with Idaho 2 weekends ago. And now, this weekend, in another battle with Boise State. It's got to be something with the state of Idaho right now if you're Oregon. But if you told us before the season that Oregon would be in the company of teams like Texas San Antonio and Florida State and NC State and Appalachian State early in the year, we'd be like, that's not good. That can't be a good thing. Well, that's the list of teams that thought they were ready to hit on high ambitions of 2024. Those are teams that were expected to be high achievers according to the SP Plus on ESPN, on the SP Plus Productions, not the S&P, not the stock market. These teams that I just mentioned have been just about the most disappointing teams in the country through 2 weeks, according to ESPN.com. Against SP Plus projections, these teams are lower by like 50 points. I mean, it's ridiculous how bad they are. They can't be any worse. These are the worst teams. UTSA has been the biggest underachiever this year by being a negative 28.5 PPG. Oregon is 133, the second biggest underachiever this year in college football. And being that, they're still 2-0 and they're ranked in the top 10 in college football. I mean, I can't believe it. I mean, I know they're good and they got to be around and they're hanging around, but they dropped 2 spots in the AP top 25. I'd drop them too. In fact, I have what my top 25 would be if I had a vote in the top 25, but I'm telling you right now, Oregon's not in my top 10. They're not even in my top 12. They're 14th. I mean, they struggled with Idaho, and then they go out and they just get into a barn burner with Boise State. They're able to outlast it. Hey, there's something to be said about good teams find a way to win. But Oregon needs to turn this thing around quickly and at least play better football, because they haven't been that. They've been incredibly underwhelming. And if that's going to be the way that they play coming up at the Big Ten, they're in trouble, even though they're number 9 in the country. They got what used to be called the Civil War. I don't even know what they call it now anymore, between Oregon and Oregon State. Border War, I don't know what they call it. It's called something new now. But they will play Oregon State 12:30 on Fox on Saturday. They're a 14-point favorite against Oregon State. I know Oregon State hasn't been that great. I mean, they did not look good in week 1. They looked okay against San Diego State. They're just bigger than San Diego State. I'll talk about that game in just a little bit. But, like, Oregon's a lot better than Oregon State. And if that game's close, I mean, you got to be worried if you're an Oregon Duck fan, because they're not playing well. And they definitely don't look like a playoff team. After that, they'll go to UCLA and take on the Bruins, who is another team that's not very good. And then they'll play Michigan State, and then they got Ohio State on October 12th, which is a huge day in college football, by the way. And then they got Purdue, Illinois. They'll beat Michigan. Michigan looks terrible. They look terrible. And then Maryland, Wisconsin, and Washington, with Wisconsin being on the road. I don't know. Oregon's going to have to really turn it around if they want to be a playoff team, in my opinion. Biggest underachievers versus the SP Plus projections through 2 weeks. They're the second worst team in college football at that. But that was a hell of a game. Number 2 on the list for top 10 games this weekend, Oklahoma State and Arkansas. Now that was a hell of a ball game between the Cowboys and the Razorbacks in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Oklahoma State ended up winning in double overtime, 39-31. But midway through the fourth quarter of this absolutely madcap affair, as quoted on ESPN.com, it was a game that if you go check out the article that was written by Bill Connolly goes, and this is a great, it's so on par for this game. So Bill Connolly's reacting to all these games in college football. He ranks his top 20, and we're picking 10 out of this group. During the fourth quarter, he texts a friend and he goes, "This feels like a game Oklahoma State has won 37 times over the last few years, and this feels like a game Arkansas has lost 37 times over the last few years." And gosh darn it, that happens to be the case. Scientific? No. But Mike Gundy's Oklahoma State Cowboys are now, with the victory on Saturday, 18-8 in one-score finishes since 2020 and have won 6 of their past 7. If the game is close, Gundy's going to win. The mullet is going to win. 18-8 in one-score finishes since 2020. That's remarkable. I mean, that is like what the Padres are doing right now. That game was the 2024 Padres versus the 2023 Padres in terms of one-run games and one-score games for football. So, for as good Mike Gundy's Cowboys have been in one-score games, Sam Pittman's Razorbacks have lost 10 of their past 12. And a team that has had just not a lot of success. They've been close, but they haven't been close enough. And they did it again. I mean, they had a lead in this game. I mean, it was at a point where I was like, as a Big 12 fan and wanting the Big 12 to do well, for my TCU Horned Frogs, of course, it was 21-7 at halftime in favor of Arkansas, and you're sitting there going like, come on, you already messed around and found out with South Dakota State the week before, and you edged it out against South Dakota State, who, by the way, is the best team in the FCS. So it's not like that was going to be an easy battle. But you're down 21-7 at home to Arkansas? I mean, Arkansas hasn't been anything near a good SEC team in a long time. In a long time. They were able to score 6 points in the third quarter, made it 21-13. And then outscore the Razorbacks 18-10 in the fourth quarter to send it to overtime, in which Oklahoma State scored 8 points. They went for 2, they got it, and they won 39-31. But it was a hell of a game. Arkansas quarterback Taylor Green was just about the best he could possibly be, and the worst at the same time. He had 416 passing yards, 89 non-sack rushing yards, which is a new stat now in college football. And on the contrary, he had 3 sacks, a bad pick, and other near picks, and a fumble when it mattered most. Arkansas's linebacker Xavier Story Jr. played the game of his life, 13 tackles, 2 missile-like tackles for a loss, and committed one of the silliest, costliest personal fouls you'll ever see, turning a 3rd and 9 into a first down in second overtime. Ollie Gordon, the second, ended up scoring on the next play. Razorbacks made most of the game's best and worst plays, and in the end, Gundy's team was a winner. And he won a weird one, as he always does. When you see Oklahoma State lose, it's because they get blown out somewhere. Like when they went down to the bounce house and lost to UCF last year by like 50 points out of nowhere. I mean, they were playing for a playoff spot last year, and they go down to the bounce house, and their dreams went and died immediately. I mean, how can you have, if you're Arkansas, some of the best performances out of your players and then the dumbest performances out of your players in the same spot? I mean, that's the sign of a bad team. I mean, you got to be better than that. You're on the road playing a ranked team in the Big 12 conference. You're supposed to be superior in the SEC, And you can't get it done because you can't get out of your own way. And that's been the story of Arkansas for so many years now. They just cannot get out of their own way. If you look at the overall stat sheet of this game and you do the team comparisons, I mean, Arkansas dominated in like all facets of the game. I mean, look at the box score. Look at the box score. Look at the team stats. They had more first downs than Oklahoma State. They were 11 for 19 on third down compared to Oklahoma State's 5 for 16. They had almost double the amount of yards Oklahoma State had. 648 yards for Arkansas over the Cowboys of Stillwater. 416 passing yards to 326 passing yards. 26 for 46. 9 yards a pass compared to Oklahoma State's 6.8 yards a pass. Dominated the ground game. Arkansas outrushed Oklahoma State 232 to 59. 47 rushing attempts, got 4.9 yards a carry. I mean, they dominated all facets of the game. The thing that killed them, though, I mean, they even dominated the time of possession. 36 minutes. Arkansas had the ball for 36 minutes in Stillwater, and they lost. And you look, they had one more penalty than the Cowboys did, and they turned the ball over 3 times and only got it back once. They got one pick, but they threw on themselves. They fumbled twice, and Oklahoma State continues to be in the top 25, and Arkansas now drops to 1-1. That's a bad loss for Arkansas. Bad loss for Arkansas. Oklahoma State stays alive and really is playing into this Big 12 being wide open. And we'll talk more about that with a couple of the games here coming up. The third best game, the fact that this is the third best game just shows you how many great games there were in college football on Saturday. Northern Illinois and Notre Dame. Northern Illinois was a 25-point dog to Notre Dame, if I'm not mistaken. I got to find the exact number. But I think they were like a 25-point underdog to Notre Dame. They were 28 plus. And Northern Illinois collected a $1.4 million check and a victory over Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana, to improve the 2-0 in the season. And by the way, they have gotten themselves ranked in the top 25, which means if they win their conference and things continue to progress, I mean, Northern Illinois has got a clear path to the playoff right now, beating Notre Dame. They win 16-14. That is the first time since 2021 a favorite of at least 28 plus points lost. Last team to do it was Texas against Kansas. Since the start of the 2022 season, FBS home teams are 6-18 and 38 as favorites of 14 points or more, which is a win percentage of .942. I mean, it's almost impossible for teams that are underdogs by 14 points or more to go in on the road and get a victory. Of those 38 losses, Notre Dame has suffered 3 of them. They've done that 3 times. Home favorites of 20 or more are 446 and 16. 16. In the FBS level, if you're a home team and you are favored by 20 points or more, you have only lost that game 16 times. Notre Dame has accounted for 2 of those 16 losses. A 1 for 8. I mean, that's like 12%. That's 12.5% of all of the losses for an FBS program that has been a 20-point favorite or more. Notre Dame accounts for 12.5% of those losses. Truly remarkable. A great job by Northern Illinois. Got them early, put them in a bad spot. When teams that are of that caliber that are underdogs by that much are on the road, the longer they have the lead and make it tight, the more momentum and change in the line goes to them in the sense of they become the favorite. Because all of a sudden the favorite starts panicking, going, what in the world is going on? If there's anything we've learned from this season early on, it's that teams can look completely different from one week to the next, which is basically college football in general. Maybe the Irish will go right back to looking like a top 5 team. It sure seemed they might be, but with a pretty weak schedule, there are only 2 more SP plus top 30 opponents on the Irish's schedule thanks to Florida State's early season faceplant, and that has been a faceplant. They won't have any more opportunities to score marquee wins. If they finish 10-2, they'll be at the back of the line of 2-loss teams, most of which will feature harder schedules and no loss as bad as this one. This was as devastating as a loss can be in week 2 of the season with a 12-team playoff. That's out of the article written by Bill Connolly. I totally agree. That loss could have knocked Notre Dame out of a playoff spot. I mean, even if they go 11-1, the loss in Northern Illinois is tough. I mean, think about how tough schedules are now, just in conference. I mean, if you look at the top 25 as constructed right now for week 3, it's like Georgia, SEC, Texas, SEC, Ohio State, Big Ten, Alabama, SEC, Ole Miss, SEC, Missouri, SEC, Tennessee, SEC, Penn State, Big Ten, Oregon, Big Ten, Miami. Finally, a team that's not one of those. It's number 10 in the country. So the fact that Notre Dame is not even in a conference, I think, hurts them. They already can't get a top 4 seed in general because they're not in a conference. That only goes to conference foes. I mean, they got to get their way into the top 12 somehow, and that's going to be very difficult to do with some of these schedules that are laid out in front of them. That is a devastating loss to Notre Dame after such a great start to the season, going down to Kyle Field and getting a win. Which, by the way, that is not as hard as I think people make it out to be at this point. I mean, it seems like they give up wins there all the time. Appalachian State went down there and beat their ass. Can't be that hard. It's loud, it's rowdy, it's colty. They got weird things going on at A&M. The midnight yell's weird. They worship a lassie dog. I mean, it's just a weird place. I'm biased, of course. You know, I went to TCU, and they don't like any other Texas school, but I don't think it's that hard to win there for a lot of schools. Do I want to see TCU go there and play? No, absolutely not. But I'm just saying it's not as big of an accomplishment as it used to be. And I think Texas A&M, you know, with the loss to Notre Dame and the way Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois, that hurts them too. That probably kept them out of the top 25 this week. Still a hell of a football game though. Other games on the best football games this weekend. How about Iowa State and Iowa? Battle for the Cy-Hawk Trophy. That was a great game. And that's another one the Big 12 pulled out. And it was shaping up to be what many thought would be just a traditional Iowa win. Not a lot of points scored. Got a couple that you needed. Grounded out. Led 13-0 at halftime against your rival. And it almost feels like, or at home, they're at home. That almost seems insurmountable at Kinnick Stadium for the Cyclones. But then you look at the second half yardage. Iowa State, 258 yards. Iowa, 107. Cyclones scored twice in the third quarter. Iowa punted on 5 straight possessions. There's Iowa for you. Put up like 40 points in their first game, but all of a sudden they can't move the ball anymore. Kyle Conrady nailed a fourth quarter field goal of 46 yards, and then another one at 54 to finish a 13-point comeback that felt more like a 31-point comeback for Iowa State. What does this game do for either team? Iowa State, again, it just keeps showing the Big 12's wide open. I mean, 2 solid wins for the Big 12 over the weekend. Oklahoma State outlasting Arkansas against an SEC school is good. That's a good win for them. Iowa State beating Iowa is a good win. You know, BYU beat SMU on Friday night. That's a great win. I mean, you start racking up some of these wins for the Big 12. And they had some bad losses too. But, you know, Arizona State beat Mississippi State this week as another SEC team that they beat. Kansas State outlasted Tulane. I mean, everything was turning up Big 12 early on Saturday. And it's going to show that the Big 12 conference is wide open. There are so many teams in the Big 12 that could win that conference right now. Arizona can win that conference. Kansas State can win that conference. Oklahoma State can win that conference. Utah can definitely win that conference. Iowa State starts 2-0 on the season. They can win that conference. I mean, keep going down the list of Big 12 schools, and it's wide open. BYU's look good in their first couple of games. TCU's undefeated. UCF is undefeated. Cincinnati burned that one against Pitt, which is another one of the games that we're going to talk about here in a second. But they looked a lot better. Baylor's 1-1, but their one loss is a non-conference game against a conference opponent in Utah. Kansas had a tough loss to Illinois over the weekend. But at the same time, I mean, you look at Houston, that's 0-2. I mean, Houston almost pulled out a win in Norman. That's like 4 points for a school that got buried at home by UNLV. That is a fun that's going to be a fun conference to watch. And who knows if they start adding more teams to this conference, but that thing is fun. It's going to be fun to watch in football because top to bottom, it's probably the most competitive. Is it the best conference? No, it's probably the third best conference, but it's definitely the most competitive conference from top to bottom. Talking about the next one, Pitt and Cincinnati. I mean, that's a tale of two halves right there between Pitt and Cincinnati. Bearcats led 27-6. I mean, I thought that game was over. They had scored on 5 of 6 drives. But from that point forward, it was a tale of two teams. It was a tale of two halves. A tale of two cities. Where's Charles Dickens? Pitt gained 278 yards and allowed just 37 as Eli Holstein led touchdown drives of 75, 82, and 94 yards to bring the Panthers within 27-25. After a late Cincinnati punt, Holstein hit Kanata Mumfield for a 34-yard setup. Set up Ben Saul's game-winning field goal at 35 yards. Just about the easiest late 21-point comeback you'll ever see. 27-6 lead for the Bearcats, and Pittsburgh came roaring back. I mean, think about the 75-yard drive, an 82-yard drive, and a 94-yard drive. I use this stat all the time. I talk about it when I coach at high school football, especially with special teams. It's a good talking point. But the likelihood of you scoring when you start at your own 20-yard line, and this stat has changed a lot. I mean, obviously with the way the ball moves now and the up-tempo and everything. But at like any level of football, if you start at your own 20, so basically like a traditional touchback. Like so in high school, if you kick the ball in the end zone and the ball crosses the plane of the end zone at any point in time, it's automatically a touchback. And that's what a lot of schools want to do. Why risk the return? Plus, this stat. If you start at your own 20-yard line, you have a 90% failure rate to score. Which means 90% of the time, if you start at your own 20, I mean, you're basically just playing for a flip of field position because you're not going to score. The Bearcats had a 27-6 lead and pinned them back at the 25-yard line and at the 18-yard line and at the 6-yard line. Again, 90% failure rate when you start at your own 20. And Pitt comes down and scores a touchdown on every one of those drives. Down 27-6. I mean, what type of prevent defense are you running in Cincinnati right there? Unreal. That's a bad loss for the Bearcats. Final team of the Big 12 we're talking about. Kansas State finally gets Tulane. Tulane has had their number for a long period of time. And Tulane almost was able to pull off what Boise State came achingly close to, and that is a huge resume-boosting win for a Group of 5 school. Instead, they let it slip away. Green Wave, Darian Mensah was brilliant for most of the game in his second career start as a redshirt freshman. He had 342 yards and 2 touchdowns, but then he redshirt freshmaned all over the field at the worst possible time. Overcame a 2010 halftime deficit. Kansas State took its first lead of the day in the fourth quarter when Mensah scrambled backwards for 15 yards and then was stripped by Austin Romaine. Jack Fabris recovered the fumble and took it 60 yards for a touchdown. Yeah, that's gonna quickly flip the script on you. Mensah rallied, driving Tulane to the Kansas State 1 until an offensive pass interference penalty pushed the Green Wave back to the 16 with seconds remaining. VJ Payne picked Mensa off to seal the win. We're going to get to Aztec football here in the next segment, but freshman quarterbacks, redshirt freshman quarterbacks, I mean, they're one of the same. I mean, Mensa has made now the same amount of starts as Danny O'Neal of San Diego State. It's the same thing. I mean, they're talented players, but it's just not that they're getting fed to the wolves. It's just a different atmosphere and a different environment playing at the college level, especially at the D1 level, and especially against a Power 5 opponent. I mean, redshirt freshman himself all over the field. Other game, this was on Friday. Duke beat Northwestern 26-20 in double overtime. It was a pretty good game. College kickers are getting a lot better. And as it's pointed out in the article on ESPN Plus by Bill Connolly, he puts it perfectly. He says, college kickers are getting too good. After making just 42% of field goals of 50 yards or more in 2021, FBS kickers rose to 46% in 2022, 47% in 2023, and are now 53% so far in 2024. That joke of like he's a college kicker only works so far, I guess. It was a teensy bit satisfying then, especially for Bill Connolly, to watch poor Jack Olson and Todd Polino attempt to kick field goals into a swirling vortex that was Northwestern's north end zone Friday night. Again, they're right on Lake Michigan now, on a practice field with like bleachers that they install for like golf tournaments. I would imagine the wind is going to whip through there even worse later in the year. With the wind whipping wickedly off Lake in the most scenic and temporary stadium in FBS made itself part of the story. Northwestern's Olson missed a 29-yarder early in the second half. Duke's Polino missed a 33-yarder that would have tied it with 2 minutes left in regulation. But given a second chance, Polino hammered home a 22-yarder at the buzzer to force overtime. And Malik Murphy completed touchdown passes to 25 yards to Jordan Moore and 3 yards to Eli Pancol to move Manny Diaz's Blue Devils to 2-0. Watching those games are going to be fun. To watch college kickers try to kick off Lake Michigan. I mean, the wind is probably going to be nuts. I said I was done talking about the Big 12. Arizona State beat Mississippi State 30-23. They were rolling early, and then Mississippi State made it close. For as disappointing as Oregon has been, Arizona State's been the exact opposite. Biggest overachiever statistically versus the SP Plus projections through 2 weeks. They're the sixth best overachieving team in college football. Number one was Tennessee. And I don't know how you overachieve when you're Tennessee, but they look really damn good down in the SEC. I wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee can win the SEC. I think they give Georgia a run for their money. I think they're better than Alabama, and we'll see what they do against Ole Miss if that opportunity presents itself. But they look really good. Louisiana Monroe is playing out of their minds. Boston College, obviously, with a big upset over Florida State. UNLV is off to a great start. They're fourth on the list, followed by Vanderbilt, who had a big win over Virginia Tech, and Arizona State. They're plus 22. Almost the exact opposite of what Oregon is. Bright start for the Sun Devils, but that average was close to being much higher thanks to a couple of Sam Levitt rushing touchdowns. No, not our Sam Levitt. There's a Sam Levitt as the quarterback for Arizona State. He had a couple of rushing touchdowns, most delightfully acrobatic big man score of week 2. Arizona State rolled to a 30-3 lead late in the third quarter, and all of a sudden Mississippi State scored 20 unanswered points, scoring 3 touchdowns in 12 minutes, including an 80-yard touchdown pass from Blake Shapen to Kevin Coleman Jr. Arizona State got the ball back with 5:27 left, nursing a 1-score lead, but Cam Skatebow took it from there. He rushed for 5 yards on a 4th and 1, ripped off a 39-yard gain to move the chains, forced Michigan State to burn its last time out and kill the clock. Arizona State is making this race even better for the Big 12. I don't think it's worth declaring Arizona State a title contender yet in the Big 12 or anything. But if you look at the list of the Big 12 race, 5 of the top 8 FBS programs from a wild week involve Big 12 teams. We just went through about like half of them. And a lot of them did really well. Aside from maybe Utah or UCF, almost no one in the conference has really looked better than anyone else, and every Big 12 game is decided by 3 points. It's so true. It's going to be nonsense. It's going to be so much fun to watch. That is going to be the most important and fun conference to watch because it's going to be carnage everywhere. The Pac-12 used to just engulf itself during conference play. Now with 5 conferences getting an automatic bid in the playoff, it could be true, but at least the Big 12 is basically guaranteed to get one team in. It's going to be carnage. I mean, you might see a 3-loss team. I think it's going to be carnage in a lot of these leagues. They have made these leagues so good in college football that every game is going to be a battle, which is great entertainment. But I think there might be some teams in schools second guessing themselves on like, well, that check's really good, but we have no shot at ever winning this conference with how good they've made it. It's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be very interesting to see. I was at the Aztec game on Saturday. That's going to be an interesting story because Aztec Fest right now is Aztec slow. I'm going to tell you why there's not a reason to panic about Aztec football, but I still think there's a lot of work. When we come back, America's Finest Football Show with Braden on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3. Welcome back to America's Finest Football Show. I'm Braden taking it up to midnight tonight on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3. The Fan, after Monday Night Football, talking some high school football, talking college football. Just went through some of the best games over the weekend in college football. I do want to give you my college football top 25 vote if I had one. I don't have one. I'm not a writer, but that's fun. Everybody does their top 25. So I have Illinois joining the top 25 for the first time as they come in at number 25 at 2-0. Northern Illinois, I give them the nod after beating Notre Dame on the road, who beat Texas A&M on the road. They come in at number 24. I got Boston College, number 23. They stayed the same after the big victory over Florida State last Monday. They come in at 23. Clemson at 22. Nebraska 21. Iowa State at 20 after defeating number 20th ranked Iowa. I have them at number 20 at 2-0. Louisville, I have in my top 15 at number 19. Notre Dame, I had them drop to 18 at 1-1 now after losing to Northern Illinois. Obviously Northern Illinois beats Notre Dame head to head and all that other stuff. But I don't know, to get Notre Dame from 5 all the way to almost out is, I think, a little ridiculous. Oklahoma at 17, LSU at 16, Arizona at 15. I have Oregon at 14. They ended up being at top 10. I think they come in at number 9 on the AP top 25. I just haven't seen anything from them yet. I think they're a good team, but they haven't been playing that great. And they might be on upset alert coming up soon in the next couple of weeks or so if they can't turn things around. So I have them at 14. Kansas State at 13. Miami, I think, has looked pretty good so far, but I always have my doubts with Miami because it's not the late 90s, early 2000s anymore. Missouri, I have at 11. A lot of people have them in their top 5 potentially or top 6. Same thing. I haven't seen enough yet to put Missouri there. Oklahoma State with a big win over Arkansas at home. They've kind of struggled in both of their games too, but South Dakota State is the reigning FCS champion. Arkansas from the SEC. I think Missouri's schedule has been easier than Oklahoma State, so I have Oklahoma State at 10. I think Utah's looked really good. I have them in my top 10. They're usually pretty good throughout the year. They come in at number 9. I think SC looks really good. I'm not even a big SC fan, but they look great. I have them at 8. Penn State at 7. They were scared this weekend against Bowling Green, but they hung on to win in Happy Valley. I have them at 7. I think Tennessee might be a top 5 team, might be a top 4 team in the country after they just shellacked NC State over the weekend. They're off to a great start. They look like they're going to score at will with Heupel and company. I have them at 6. Ole Miss has looked outstanding in the first 2 weeks as well. They come in at number 5. I got Alabama 4. Even though they had a big win against West Kentucky in week 1 and they kind of pulled away late against USF, they were struggling with USF for a while. But I have them at 4. Ohio State's 3. They've cruised in 2 weeks. I think Texas is really, really good. I think they're right on the cusp of being the best team in the country, but until somebody knocks off Georgia, I can't not give it to Georgia, who probably should have been in the playoff last year and got hosed. I got the Georgia Bulldogs number 1. If that was the college football playoff rankings, your college football playoff, at least in my world, if I was voting on this, would be Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Utah 3, Miami 4. Again, that all has to be conference champions. Texas 5, Alabama 6, Ole Miss 7, Tennessee 8, Penn State 9, USC 10, Oklahoma State 11, and then the group of 5 conference winner, Northern Illinois, would come in at number 12, which means Texas would play Northern Illinois, Alabama would play Oklahoma State, Ole Miss would play USC, and Tennessee would play Penn State, with all the first teams hosting the second. The winner of Texas and Northern Illinois would play Miami. Alabama, Oklahoma State would play Utah. Ole Miss and USC would play Ohio State, and Tennessee and Penn State would play Georgia in the next round. Let's talk about the Aztecs. I talked a lot about it on Sunday during my show. If you missed any of it, the Braden Soprano Show, you can find it on the podcast platform. You can also find it on YouTube at 97 Through the Fan under the Braden Soprano playlist, as you can find this show on America's Finest Football Show on the America's Finest Football playlist on YouTube as well. All of this stuff is, again, wherever you find your podcast, at B_SURP on social media. But I talked about it on my show on Sunday, and we don't have too much time, but San Diego State, they don't have, at least in my opinion, they don't have the weapons offensively necessary in order to run the offense that Sean Lewis would like to run. It just doesn't look like they have the receiving core that they would need. They are also putting a lot on the shoulders of a true freshman quarterback in Danny O'Neal, who has shown signs of being good and also showing signs of, as I mentioned before, with Tulane's quarterback in redshirt freshman-ness. He looks like a freshman. He does freshman mistakes. I mean, he's missing throws. The most catastrophic mistake was fumbling at the 3-yard line going in for an opportunity for San Diego State to tie the game against Oregon State, and instead they fumble. Oregon State on that drive finishes it off with a touchdown to go up 14-0 in the fourth quarter. They had another touchdown in trash time, but offensively, Aztec Fast is starting out slower than expected. I knew it was going to take some time, but it is a little slower than expected. Seems like the deep shots are being taken a little bit too much, a lot more than just some quick game. And they have worked on some quick game, and I know it's going to be a work in progress. But it doesn't get any easier for the Aztecs now because they got to play Cal. And usually I would be like, that's a winnable game for San Diego State. Cal just beat Auburn. They just went down and beat Auburn. Beat them 21-7. So it's going to be a tough draw for them. And then after that, they got to play the Chippewas, Fire Up Chips, and Central Michigan. They got to be able to figure out that offense and figure it out quickly. I mean, they went down to Auburn and won 21-14. Cal Berkeley did. They're 2-0. They're 4th in the ACC right now. It's a little bit slower than I was expecting. Defense looks great. San Diego State's defense looks great. A bend, don't break is what it was against Oregon State. Looked good against Texas A&M Commerce. You got guys that fly to the ball and play hard. It's not one of those vintage San Diego State defenses we've seen the last couple of years, but they did their job. I mean, they got the job done on Saturday night. They held Oregon State, ultimately to 21 points, but didn't get a lot of help from their offense. And that offense is going to be a work in progress. But if you look at Danny O'Neal, every time he steps back and he's got time to throw, he's got nothing open downfield. I mean, there is nothing open. And there was a couple of times where he had an open receiver, just overthrew him. That's going to work out in practice and timing, and he's got to get used to playing at the D1 level. He's only made 2 starts. But Aztec Fast has been Aztec slow. They get on the Aztec quick to punt is what it's been. But I think they're going to turn it around. I like Sean Lewis a lot. I think he's gonna get it going, but it's just taking a little bit more time than expected. When we come back, final segment of the show, we're previewing you week 4 of the high school football season, America's Finest Football Show on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Final segment of America's Finest Football Show on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan, taking up to midnight tonight. We're running out of time, but we want to get into some game picks for week 4 on the high school football schedule. As we talked some college football earlier in the show, we talked about week 3 of the high school football season. Again, if you missed any of it, you can check it out on the podcast, America's Finest Football Show with Braden Soprano. It's on the Braden Soprano page, which you can find on the Braden Soprano Show on anywhere you find your podcast, Spotify, Apple. We're everywhere. Odyssey app, you can find us all over the place at 97.3 The Fan or the Braden Soprano Show on all of those platforms. You can find America's Finest Football Show. You can also rewatch this on Thursday night when we debut the YouTube show on Thursday night with, it'll be this show on Thursday at 7 o'clock. I'll be in the chat talking with all of you, talking some high school football as we preview week 4. Last couple of weeks, 18-2 on game picks so far this season, with 9-1 last week. I thought San Clemente was going to beat La Costa Canyon, but I'm happy to be wrong on that one. Give San Diego another victory over an out-of-town school. We got some great games involving some ranked teams. Again, watching the cream separate from the crop here, and seeing where everything plays out. I mentioned, where everything would be. Actually, I forgot to mention that, but like if the season ended today, your open division would be Lincoln, followed by Lincoln playing LCC in the 1-4 matchup, Cathedral playing Carlsbad in the 2-3, Division 1, Granite Hills would be the 1 seed, San Marcos the 2, Mission Hills the 3, La Jolla the 4, El Camino playing Poway in the 5-12 matchup, Helix playing Central in the 6-11, Rancho Bernardo playing Oceanside in the 7-10, and Mount Miguel playing Del Norte in the 8-9. I mean, those are some great matchups, and there's a lot more to report on, but again, running out of time tonight. Bishops would be the 1 seed for Division 2. Mater Dei would be the 2 seed. Torrey Pines the 3. Madison the 4. Saints would play Mount Carmel in the 5-12 matchup. La Jolla Country Day, Steel Canyon in the 6-11. Scripps Ranch University City in the 7-10. And Santa Fe Christian and Brawley in the 8-9. I mean, I like the new playoff format. I think it's going to be a lot of great matchup and a lot of great matchups in the postseason from Division 1 all the way to Division 5. Let's talk about some of the games that are going to help make this decision easier, or should I say, see everybody start playing themselves into where they belong. And we're going to start with one of the big games in Mount Miguel at Bishops. Mount Miguel trying to get revenge on Bishops and Cash Herrera, who was able to give Mount Miguel a loss early in the season last year. Mount Miguel's 3-0. Bishops is 1-1. There'll be a 7 o'clock game in La Jolla. Mount Miguel is favored to win this game by 9 points, according to CalPreps. Mount Miguel is expected to win 35-26. I think Mount Miguel wins this game, but I think it's a little bit closer than that. Bishops might be ready to go for year 2 against the Matadors, but I'm going to take Verlaine's boys and Mount Miguel. I think they get the victory. Madison's at Helix. Now this is a battle of 2 teams that are trending in the wrong direction. Helix was able to get their first win over the weekend against St. Augustine. Madison, who has struggled this year, got the 1 win over Steel Canyon, but they have struggled in their other 2 games, sitting at 1-2. Both teams trying to play themselves back into a good opportunity in Division 1. Helix trying to play themselves back to an open spot. Games at 7 o'clock out in East County. Helix expected to win by 4 points. They're a 21-17 pick from CalPreps. I think Helix wins this game. I think they win by more than 4. I'll take the Highlanders in this one. La Jolla Country Day is at Scripps Ranch. I think this is a really good matchup, too. 22nd ranked La Jolla Country Day Tories in town. According to CalPreps.com, they're 2-1. Scripps Ranch is 3-0 after beating Norwalk last week. Tories coming off a loss to Mount Miguel. Scripps Ranch is favored by 2 in this game at home at 7 o'clock. I'm going to go with the Tories in this one. I think the Tories are able to upset Scripps Ranch as they go on to win. It's a tight spread according to CalPreps.com, but I'm going to take La Jolla Country Day Tories. Again, these are not gambling spreads; they're prediction spreads. You cannot gamble on high school football. La Jolla Vikings at Rancho Bernardo. This is going to be a great game. This might be the game of the week. In town, at least with 2 San Diego teams. La Jolla has ripped off 3 really good wins to start the year. They beat Bishops in their traditional Week 1 game for the battle in La Jolla, and then they knocked off Torrey Pines, a traditional school that's usually in the Division 1 open conversation. They're a little bit struggling this year, but a big win for them for La Jolla. They beat Madison last week. La Jolla is trending in the right direction for sure. Rancho Bernardo doing the same thing. They got 3 wins also. They beat Poway earlier in the year to start the season. They just came off a win against Point Loma. Rancho Bernardo is cruising. I like this matchup. I think it's probably the best matchup of the weekend. La Jolla is expected to win 21-17 according to CalPreps. I think Rancho Bernardo gets the win at home in the upset. Give me Eric Weddle and company with the Rancho Bernardo Broncos. I got the Broncos beating La Jolla. Del Norte at Carlsbad. This is a good one, too, on multiple fronts. Del Norte trying to show that they can hang in D1. And if they can knock off Carlsbad, that'd be a good step in the right direction and really show just how good La Costa Canyon is, because LCC already knocked off Del Norte, and it wasn't even close. I think Carlsbad's probably going to win this game, but we're going to see what Del Norte's got against the Lancers, who have been in the open division the last couple of years. Carlsbad's projected to win 28-7 according to CalPreps. It's a 21-point favorite for Carlsbad. I'm going to take the Lancers in this one. I think the Lancers get the job done, but I think this is going to be a good game in the North County. An out-of-town school coming to play Lincoln. It's the 7th best team in the country, the J. Sarah. It's J. Sarah Catholic. I think they're the Lions or the Monarchs or something like that. They play Lincoln at 7 o'clock. I think that's at Southwestern College. Lincoln's 2-1 on the year. Only loss was to Arborview. They went out and beat Coronado of Nevada last week. The week before that, they played Long Beach Poly and got the victory. J. Sarah Catholic's expected to win by 21 points. I think J. Sarah wins this game. J. Sarah's top 10 in the country. They're going to be hard to beat. Torrey Pines at San Marcos. I like San Marcos in this game. They're projected to win by 23 points. I think they improve to 4-0. I think Torrey drops to 1-3. El Cap, Steel Canyon have battled teams that are not currently ranked in the top 25 in the county. El Cap tried to bounce back after a loss to Chula Vista. They're 1-2. Steel Canyon's 2-1. Steel Canyon's favored by 17. I'll take Scratch and the Cougars in this one. Cavers and Sun Devils, San Diego High and Mount Carmel. This will be a fun one at 7 o'clock up in North County. Mount Carmel's favored by 17. I think San Diego makes it close, but I'll take the Sun Devils to win this game. Last game for you, Santa Fe Christian and Christian out in East County. The game will be at Granite Hills High School. Santa Fe Christian's favored by 1 against the Christian Patriots. I like the Eagles in this one over Christian. I'm going to take Santa Fe Christian to win that game at 7 o'clock. That will do it for us, America's Finest Football Show. I'm Braden Soprenet signing off. Thanks again for tuning in to the show, as we'll be here each and every Monday from 10 to midnight. Thanks again. Talk to you next week.
What's up, guys? It's Braden Soprenet. Thanks again for downloading and listening to America's Finest Football Show. Airing each and every Monday night from 10 to midnight during the football season, talking high school football, college football. It re-airs on YouTube, and if you're listening on or watching on YouTube right now, thanks again. Give us the like and the subscribe to Braden Soprenet's YouTube page at B_SURP, as well as 97.3 The Fan. You can follow me on social media at B_SURP, at BSURP. Thanks again for downloading and listening. Hope you enjoy the episode, guys.